Welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody here today. I am Mark Gilfix. This is my father and colleague, Michael Gilfix. You may know us. If you don't, it's great to connect with you. What are we here to talk about? Well, we're here to talk about the new tax bill and what it means for your estate plan and some other areas. So let's jump in. And this is really focused again on the new so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, whether you consider a beautiful bill or not. We are nonpartisan here. We're here just to share information, but it is law. And so it's really important that we all understand this. And I am not exaggerating when I say that what we talk about here could be worth millions of dollars to you and your family, especially when we're looking across generations. Even if you don't consider yourself high net worth, you might consider yourself just a normal middle class family. This could still be worth millions of dollars to you, and we'll show you why. And of course, if you're higher net worth, then it's even more important. So let's talk about some key changes. But before we even jump into that, I always want to make these points whenever I give presentations, because there's a lot of information we're going to go through here today. But three key points. One, this is from my management consulting days and from going through a lot of very challenging personal stretches with health and other things. Hope is not a strategy. Hope that everything just works out. Hope that my half-assed, pardon my language, plan is going to be fine, or no plan is going to be fine. It's not a strategy. These are high stakes issues. Let's have a strategy and let's control what we can control. The world is chaotic. The world is scary. The world is going in all sorts of crazy directions. There's so much that we cannot control. Let's control what we can. And what I love about estate planning, what we do, is there's so much more that we can control than we think. And we'll talk about, in light of the new tax law, some areas that we can control that you might not have thought of before. And there are a few high leverage moments in life where you take one or two steps that can reverberate across your family for generations, or can have a multi-million-dollar impact on your family's future, or add security for you and your kids. So that's what these issues are. They are high leverage decisions and tools that we can use and steps we can take to protect our families. So what are we going to go through here today? It's not so many subjects, but it's a lot within it. And that's why we can't take questions during this. Please enter questions in the Q&A function. We'll get to as many of those as we can. So we're going to talk about why estate planning matters more than ever, and really what the new law is. Estate and gift tax, the path forward. We're actually going to go through a lot more than what this says. Some highlights from the new tax law. We're going to go over the massive property tax cliff that exists for any family in California that owns property, the essential documents you need, and the secret tool that every family should have to protect future generations, protect your assets for multiple generations in ways that can have multi-million-dollar impacts. And key action steps. We talk about controlling what you can control. Well, let's talk about some of the steps you can take right now or in the next year or two to make sure that you and your family are protected in light of all this uncertainty. We have to always point out this is nonpartisan. We're not here to take political sides. This is for educational purposes only. This does not create a legal relationship. We can only do that if we work with you formally. So don't try this stuff at home, but I do hope this empowers you with really important information and gives you some ideas for steps you can take to protect your family. Before we jump in, Mike, any thoughts on your side?
I do marvel at the name of the bill. The One Big Beautiful. I mean, is that not incredible marketing by Trump and his team? You talk about it, and we have to call it a beautiful bill, regardless of how we view it. Honestly, I'm so impressed with that. There's a lesson there.
Yeah. And just for those of you who don't know us, by the way, we are Gilfix and the Bull Associates. We're national leaders in our field, regularly published nationally. Mike's a regular contributor to Bottom Line Personal Magazine. He writes form books for other attorneys. We've written books. We'll show previews of those in just a moment. We've been around for over 40 years in California, multi-generational team. If you're in California, we can work with you. So we work with people from San Diego all the way up to Wairika and everywhere in between. Most of our clients are in the Bay Area, but lots in Los Angeles, many in San Diego, some in Orange County too. So we can help you if you're in California. And our goal is always to provide peace of mind and return on investment, to show the value of what we're doing and help you understand how the steps you're taking can be so powerful for your family. I think that gives so much peace of mind and can be health giving. So we're out there speaking and talking and communicating. You're watching us here today, but we really want to stay ahead of the curve, and we write books about this. So Mike and I co-authored a new version of Beat Estate Tax Forever that's coming out. A new version is coming out very soon. We also co-authored a book on special needs plan called the Special Needs Trust Creation and Management Guide. They're available on Amazon. If you work with us, you can get a copy of these at a discount or for free in some cases. So we think about this all the time. So why don't we dive in? Let's talk about the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OBA. I guess that's what it is. It's now law, whether you like it or not. And so we're going to go through some key highlights here, but I think the key is we're not going to go through everything. Our focus is not on our focus is on estate planning and estate tax related issues. It's not on income tax. We're going to touch on some of those issues, but this is really focused on the implications of this law for your estate plan and your long-term care planning. So we're not covering everything here, but I think it's really important that we understand what this means for your estate plan. So let's talk about what the law includes, because we're also going to go through what it doesn't have, because I think that's almost just as important as what it does have. So let's cut to the chase here. The biggest issue that we were paying attention to is the estate and gift tax exemption, the amount that you can pass tax-free to your loved ones, free of estate and gift tax. This combination of gifts made during life and what you leave to your family or loved ones when you pass away. This year, it's $13.99 million per person. Before this law was passed, it looked like that was going to plummet. It was going to drop to only 7 million per person because the current law was set to expire at the end of this year. The new law means there is no cliff. The estate tax exemption will go to $15 million per person next year. There is no sunset provision, and it is indexed with inflation. So what does that mean? It means we don't have this hard deadline of December 31st, 2025 to protect assets if you are higher net worth, and we have some certainty. Although anything that is permanent, that just means it's permanent until a new law passes. But that's different from the last bill, though, which did have a sunset provision, meaning if no new laws were passed, the numbers were going to change. Now we're in a place where unless a new law is passed, the exemption is 15 million per person. Portability between spouses is still allowed. We'll talk a little bit about what that means, but it has big implications for your trust structure. There's some people who were holding off on updating their trust. Now we kind of have certainty, and we have good, clear tax advice for that. If you're a couple married, it has big implications for the structure of your living trust. The step up in cost basis remains. This is huge. So anything in your taxable estate when you pass away still gets the benefit of a stepped up cost basis. It's a huge benefit to your family. There was some talk a couple of years ago of getting rid of that. That is still available. It is still part of the law. The annual gift exemption, the amount you can give to your loved ones or anybody you want every year, is $19,000 per person this year. It looks like that's staying. It will be indexed with inflation. We're going to talk more later about what's in this law is potentially massive cuts to Medi-Cal, Medicaid, and that could have huge implications for your long-term care and how you're thinking about that. Let's take a couple other key points. Mike, do you want to talk about that?
Before you go to that, Mike, let's mention a couple of other things that were not included that I think are really,
we're going to
really
get to
important.
that in just a second, though. Yeah, why don't you go through it now?
Okay. So one is there was some discussion about that 1031 exchange that many know about, and cutting it back, limiting its use. It's not. I mean, it's intact. And there was also discussion of eliminating this use of something called discounting that we use sometimes very aggressively for folks who do have taxable estates. That also remains untouched. So again, the absence of limits on some of the tools and techniques is big news, even though it's not affirmatively in the legislation. It means we're still equipped to look at larger estates and still make dramatic positive steps to protect larger estates from estate tax exposure.
Yeah, and just other points. We're not going to spend too much time. This isn't the focus of our talk, but the cuts are now permanent, as I mentioned. So meaning they don't sunset. So it would take a new law passing to change the rules as they are. This also lowered individual income tax rates, or keeps them where they were from the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Another good name for a bill. It sounds good no matter what you think. I think a really interesting tool that's available, 100% bonus depreciation. So if you own a business and you make investments, this can even apply to real property, short-term vacation rentals. There's some amazing tools you can use with this, but 100% bonus depreciation is back. It was 100% a few years ago. It was phasing down, but that is back, and it looks like that's permanent. The SALT deduction for California residents. This is big for us, right? We have very, very high income tax rates at a state level. The prior law limited it to $10,000 even for couples. It has been increased to $40,000 per person, per couple or per tax filing. So that's a benefit to Californians because we pay a lot of state income tax. It can even use property tax expenses against your federal income. Now, I want to note, though, for high earners, this does phase out. So if you are fortunate enough to make over about $500,000 per year, even as a married couple, this $40,000 phases out back down to $10,000, and it's not permanent. So the SALT deduction is going to go down over time. That is one piece of this law that is not permanent, that does sunset. Charitable
Mark,
deduction.
excuse me, on the SALT deduction, for those of you who are interested in today's Wall Street Journal, there is a discussion and an explanation of how the SALT deduction impacts those with higher incomes. So again, if that's you, if your income could approach, if you're fortunate enough to have your income approach $500,000 a year or be over that, you'll want to take a look at that article. It's a nice, very understandable discussion of what the issues are.
And we'll add that. It's the July 22nd article. We'll add that to the video when we post this. So in charitable deductions, just be aware there are limits on how much you can deduct. You have to give a certain amount every year to get charitable deductions. There are limits on how much you can give. We're big believers in charitable giving, both just for the goodness of doing it and as an estate planning tool. So just be aware of that. There's a new Trump accounts for children. We're still looking into that. I think the benefit, they seem a little bit redundant with 529 plans and custodial Roths, but you may be able to get $1,000 from the government if you set these up, if you have young children. And there's some interesting notes just about overtime pay and tips. So Mike, you were talking about this before, but waiters win, home health aides, nurses don't. So it's kind of picks random winners and losers, but that's what the tax law does. I think
that was political marketing, of course, which was
right. So
very smart.
Yeah, and as Mike said, what's in the law is almost as important as what's not in the law is almost as important as what's in it. And so, as Mike alluded to before, there was talk in prior years of eliminating some of the strategies we can use if you are high net worth and reducing estate and gift tax exposure. Those are still around. As I pointed out, the SALT deduction is not permanent. It is phasing out because they didn't really want to help out Californians and New Yorkers too much. And there is no cliff from an estate and gift tax perspective. Now that could come back at any time if there's a change in the political winds. So let's be on top of this. And as I point out here, there is no guarantee that taxes won't change again in 3 years. So permanent is a very relative term. It is not actually permanent. It is just permanent until a new law passes. I think one point, we were discussing this before, but one thing that's not in this bill is support for the IRS. There's been a reduction in funding for the IRS. I think, just morale is probably low there. There are fewer audits. So what does that mean? It means maybe some accountants are encouraging people to take more aggressive tax planning steps. We don't stay within the rules, don't take any risks that would put you in trouble. But, I think some accountants are saying we're going to be more aggressive than we were in prior years because we're less worried about audits. But again, the IRS could get refunded in a few years and they can look back a few years. So be very careful with any aggressive tax planning. And very importantly, not in this bill because it's federal law, is state level property taxes. So California's Prop 19, we're going to talk about that again. We hammer this, is still law. It cannot be touched by federal legislation. It is still law in California. So what does this mean for your estate plan? There's a lot of talk here, and we're going to come back to this, but I just want to lay out a couple high level points. We need to focus on the basics and make sure your core plan is updated. We don't have this hard deadline, but given the higher level of certainty that we have, I think this does have implications in the structure of your living trust and on some tools you might use in the near term. So let's make sure that your core estate plan is up to date. Do you have the right backup trustees named? Have you put asset protection tools in place for your kids? We have opportunities to do that now that might not exist in the future. Do you have digital assets? Do you have crypto? You might have had a little bit of crypto a few years ago, and now it's worth a lot. And there's been a lot of legislation basically giving the government's blessing to crypto. We had Crypto Week in Washington last week, I think it was. So crypto is here to stay. It may not stay at its current valuations. It may skyrocket, it may plummet. But does your estate plan even address that? We're helping more and more clients with this. And do you have the right living trust structure? And I do think property, if you own property in California, you want to keep it for future generations, you need to be aware of property tax issues and you need to take steps ahead of time to protect it. That's a massive, massive issue. So your core estate plan, living trust, powers of attorney, advanced directive. And just to touch on this, in light of the new law, I think we're going to have stronger recommendations for the structure of a living trust that couples should have, an AB or non-AB. We're not going to go through that much here. But the implications of this, it could be a multi-six-figure issue, even if you're not high net worth, to have the right trust structure. That by itself could be a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 issue or benefit to your family fixing that. And does your power of attorney and trust, does it address sophisticated tax planning if you're incapacitated? Does it address crypto or digital assets? These are other really key updates. There's been some changes in law there. And does your plan include protections for future generations? We consider it basically a no-brainer to do this. We'll talk about what that means in just a little bit.
Let me really emphasize this point. We covered these points so quickly. This point that Mark made about the structure of your trust, for a couple, there's actually 2 or 3 or 4 alternative structures that you could have for your trust, and they have an impact on estate tax. They have an impact on the stepped-up basis. Multiple areas of emphasis that are not often discussed. I just looked at one of the new websites for one of the new multi-million-dollar funded AI-generated trust services, and I delved down deeply enough to see that they don't ask the questions that need to be asked. So again, we have the AB trust, we have the non-AB trust, we have the ABC trust, we have other issues depending on the nature of your asset. So, it's a complicated thing. Not just do a trust, it's what trust, what kind of trust makes sense for you. That's the tough question.
And the good thing is we can pretty quickly, when we sit down with people, sort through this and get to that answer. Once people really can go through and ask questions about it, I think that's the hard part. You need illustrations and questions to understand it. And it's not just your living trust, it's what structures you're putting into place for your kids, your grandkids, your loved ones. There's special needs issues. You just want to protect assets. You want to protect them from themselves. So they're, just again, high leverage moments, putting the right tools into place now, especially as we have a little bit more certainty about federal tax laws, can have a massive impact on your family's future. So speaking of that, why don't we transition to an issue that we talk about all the time? We get calls about this on almost a daily basis. We've helped many families with this. And what am I talking about here? Well, it's property taxes in California. So let's share some slides here. And we have actually some interesting new analysis that we've done on this for families. I'll show you some pretty insane numbers. So we call it the California property tax cliff. It's already here. Federal legislation cannot touch this. We're talking about Prop 19. We're going to go into what this means and what the new law is. And if you own a home, or if you own a rental or a vacation cabin, and if you want to keep it there for your kids and grandkids, this is the biggest tax law you have to understand, because it is a multi-million-dollar issue for every family who owns a semi-high value property in California. We're going to show how even for one property, this can be a multi-million-dollar issue. And again, you talk about high leverage moments. Saving low taxes for a property is big. And it's more than just a home, right? Like I'll tell a story in just a moment, but Mike, you think about this a lot. It's not just about saving taxes, it's about keeping the family home.
Yeah, I came to appreciate this maybe 30, 35 years ago. When we think about our home, it isn't just an asset. Some people don't even think of it as an asset. It's the hearth. It's where our families grew up. There's emotions tied to our home. And retaining it for our kids has always been a priority. It's always been a priority. And anything that erodes that just needs to be addressed, and Prop 19 dramatically erodes it. And Mark made the point that federal legislation can't change this. Very importantly, neither can our legislators. So you might not like Prop 19 or certain aspects of it. You can call up your state assemblyman or state senator all day long. That was a voter initiative. It'll take a new voter initiative to change it. So being really aware of where are the pressure points, what might be feasible to have an impact on it, what you have to do is plan, and that's what we can take care of.
Yeah, and I want to tell us, hope is not a strategy, right? And I want to tell us a quick story. This is from yesterday, and I don't know if this gentleman's actually watching this webinar here today, but I got a call, and this is indicative of many calls that we've gotten, because we have a lot of information out there about Prop 19. And it was from a gentleman who is a very talented artist, and he's grew up in the Bay Area. His parents recently passed away. His mother recently passed away, and the family home is in Mountain View, and they have an art studio that his father used for decades, that he's used for decades. The home is, again, more than just a home. It's where he's created art. It's where he's been around friends and family for decades, and all he wants is to stay in mom and dad's home. That's it. but his mom passed away almost a year ago. And he called and said, "Hey, I know you guys do a lot of Prop 19 planning, property tax planning. Can we do anything here? I just got a supplemental bill for about $25,000 for the first year I've owned this house, and I'm told it's going to stay there and it's going to keep going forever. I can't afford that. I'm not a techie. I'm not high net worth. I just want to stay in the house." And my answer was, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can really do." There's $1 million in protection. He already had gotten that. We'll go over what the rule means. But even with the limited protections provided by Prop 19 for parent-child transfers, he was still facing about a $25,000 plus annual increase in property taxes. So what does it mean? It means he's going to have to sell the house. Now he should have the stepped up basis. So, hopefully it shouldn't be too bad a hit. He can find another place to be, but he's not going to stay in the family home. And that's lost forever. And he's going to have to downsize or leave the Bay Area most likely because he just doesn't have the assets to pay for a new property and higher property taxes. So we get these calls where it's too late, but we also get some calls where there's still time. And we're going to talk just a little bit about what can be done ahead of time. And really, it just takes time. It takes planning ahead of, it takes family cooperation. It's not easy work, but let's talk about what the law is and what it means for you and your family. So Mike, why don't you lead us through what the law, we touched on what the law was, but it's kind of irrelevant because that's no longer the law, right? So let's focus on briefly where it was and where it is now.
Sure. And as mentioned, it changed the California Constitution. That's why it takes another voter initiative to change it. We're not going to go through the list of reasons why we do not believe, as a practical matter, that this is going to be rescinded, repealed, changed, maybe a decade or so down the road when a lot of people feel pain on this issue. But it's not going to happen yet. There's been efforts to get it back on the ballot. They didn't get nearly enough signatures. There just isn't interest or understanding. So let's really go through what the law is today. Before it became law, there were a lot of protections. Let's keep it simple. They disappeared. So now what happens is if you own a piece of property that is not your residence, we'll keep it simple first. You have a rental property, you have a vacation home, a second property. Upon your passing, and if that property is going to go to your kids, it's not going to be sold, there will be a complete reassessment and property taxes will skyrocket. The most recent case I spoke with was somebody this morning where they have a rental property where they're currently paying about $12,000 a year in property taxes. They've owned it for years. The property has grown in value. It's in Santa Barbara. It's worth about 4.2. She wants to keep it for the family. So property tax for that property is going to go to about $46,000 a year from 12. From 12 to 46,000. No exceptions, no protections. The only partial exception has to do with their residence. Okay, so let's take a simple example. You're paying $8,000. Let's make it 10. It's round. Nice round number. Paying $10,000 a year in property taxes. The house is now worth $3.5 million. If you want that home to be preserved for your kids, there's going to be some property tax increase inescapably. It's a different analysis depending on whether or not your kids or a child becomes the resident of the home. If one child does become a resident of the home, the first $1 million in assessed value is forgiven. So if it's worth 3.5, the new assessed value is going to be 2.5. Property taxes will still go to about $28,000 a year. So there's still a huge increase. If the property is going to be retained and a child does not make it his or her residence, complete reassessment. So you see, even if the child moves in, there is still going to be a property tax increase. That's Bay Area. If you have a home worth $900,000 in Eureka and Wairika, and a child moves in, there will be no property tax increase. But again, around here in the Bay Area, wealthier areas, La Jolla, it's unavoidable. It's inescapable. Go back to that point about how the home is more valuable than just the asset. I deeply believe that. The thing that probably upsets me the most about this, I understand disparity in tax, no exceptions for special needs. The countless occasions where mom and dad are trying to keep the house for their child, or they have a second duplex for the child to live in, because that's the only home that child has ever known. Now, those plans are falling apart left and right because of this, and Mark will talk about some solutions that we have in just a couple of minutes. So it's so important. Every single property owner in California needs to know about this. If you have a parent, it's particularly important because you're the one who's going to inherit. So think about it multi-generationally.
Yeah. And if you're the one who may be inheriting the house, you may be the one who should get your parents to start this. We have many adult children who are actually leading the charge and actually paying for the planning for their parents, as long as the parents are okay, that's fine, because it's the next generation that gets hit. And just a couple of ways you can deal with this without any lawyers. Well, one Mike mentioned, make sure that if you don't do any planning ahead of time, at least it's critical that if you inherit a house from your parents, if it's their primary residence, make sure you make it your residence within a year, and at least you can get some partial protection from reassessment. As Mike mentioned, if the house is worth under a million or under 1.2, 1.3 million, you probably have no meaningful increase in property taxes. So it's critical if you want to avoid increases. If you are the child, at very least, if you move into that house, make it your primary residence. Now, if you ever move out and the state finds out, taxes could skyrocket again. If you want to leave a house to a partner and you're not married, get married. Prop 19 didn't impact this, but transfers of property between spouses are exempt from property tax increases. Prop 19 didn't change that. So two ways to solve the Prop 19, well, to minimize the property tax problem. If you're a kid, at least move into mom and dad's house and you can save some money. And if you are not married and want to leave a house to a significant other, get married. And that's a very simple way. But let's talk about for the other 95%, well, the massive issue for families who have higher value primary residence in the Bay Area or Southern California along the coast, or if you are fortunate enough to have rental property or another property in California that you want to keep for the next generation. So I want to share some illustrations that really show what the numbers are, because I think it's hard to wrap our heads around this because, excuse me, it's not a one-time thing. This is forever. Once property taxes go up, they almost never come back down, ever. It takes a miracle to bring property taxes down. So let's talk about an example of a $3.3 million home that is worth, so the fair market value is $3.3 million and the assessed value is $300,000. We have many clients like this in the Bay Area. 3.3 million is a huge number. But crazily, in parts of LA, San Diego, Orange County, the Bay Area, that's not even necessarily that big a house, right? It boggles my mind, and it's a big challenge for working families. But let's say you're fortunate to have this situation where mom and dad bought the house decades ago. Property taxes are based on a $300,000 valuation. Prop 13 is still in place. It keeps mom and dad's valuation low. But let's talk about what happens if a child moves into mom and dad's house after inheriting a $3.3 million home. Well, we can protect $1 million of fair market value from reassessment. That still exposes about $2.3 million of the house's value to a reassessment. So in this case, property taxes go from about $3,300 a year to over $25,000 per year. This is just illustrative. This is for educational purposes only. The numbers might vary, but we're talking about an approximate $22,000 per year increase in property taxes for the kids. And that goes up by 2% a year because Prop 13 then comes back in at that new assessed value. And we'll keep the annual increases to only about 2%. But hey, a 2% increase on $25,000 is a lot bigger than a 2% increase on $3,300. Over time, don't worry about the details too much. Just from some simple calculations, this means over $240,000 in extra taxes paid over 10 years, over $890,000 in extra state taxes paid over 30 years. So if your kid just inherits your house, stays in it, and we don't do planning ahead of time, we're talking about almost $900,000 paid in state taxes, in higher property taxes. And let's say that a child doesn't move into a house, or let's say that it's not your primary residence, or the kid doesn't move in within a year. Same situation, $3.3 million home, $300,000 assessed value. We're looking at about a $33,000 a year increase in property taxes. Over 10 years, over $360,000. Over 30 years, almost $1.34 million. $1.34 million in extra taxes for one property, if no steps are taken to plan ahead. That's a third of the value of the property, right? And I think, again, I just want to hammer these numbers. These are massive numbers for one property. Your property may be higher, maybe lower. And I did a little exercise. I used AIs. I didn't vet this, but I said, okay, what if a family, instead of paying an extra $30,000 per year over 30 years, they take that money and they reinvest it in just index funds, and it grows at an average of 6% per year. And this, I didn't vet this. This is for educational purposes only. But this could be $2.3 million in extra savings for your child if we plan ahead. And instead of paying $30,000 a year in property taxes, they invest it and it grows at 6% per year. After 30 years, this could be, no guarantees, of course, but if they reinvested that could be over $2 million. in their estate. So a massive swing, like versus paying out over $1 million, they could have an extra 2.3. So again, this is all illustrative. This is just to make the point for one property. This can be a multi-million-dollar swing, and maybe your house is only worth $2 million. Okay, well, scale these numbers down. We're still talking potentially about $1 million in savings for your kids. So it's a massive issue. So that brings us to, well, what can we do about this? We've developed different solutions for this. It takes time, it takes effort. There is no one size fits all solution. We have to be very careful with this. And we have to make sure that any solution we look at keeps ownership within the family, that transfers to the right people, that we keep in mind estate, gift, and capital gains taxes. There are ways that we can structure this to optimize for both property taxes and capital gains taxes, where you can still benefit from that stepped up basis if we're very careful. And we can even layer in protection against future divorces and lawsuits once this process is done. It's pretty extraordinary. Again, no one size fits all. And the main thing is we cannot do this at the last minute. We need everybody to be communicating. We want everyone on the same page, ideally. And we need to start with some time to spare. The government could change their interpretation of Prop 19. There's risks to all of this, right? But I know that if you don't take these steps, it is a 100% certainty taxes will skyrocket. If you take these steps with time to spare, and it's a lot of steps and every family is different, we can, in almost every case, find ways to pursue the strategy to keep taxes where they are and avoid these massive increases. So there's always risks. There's always risks that government interpretations could change. We have to be very careful. That's why we say don't try this at home. Sometimes when we give talks, people walk up to us and say, "Oh, what if I just do this, this, and this?" We're like, don't do that. Because if you don't do it with a holistic sense of all the pitfalls and all the risks, you can screw things up really quickly. And if you make a big mistake, it's often very challenging to undo. So again, we have to be aware of insurance issues, changes in government and assessor office interpretation. But we have helped many families with this. And if we plan ahead, if we meet with you and go through your situation, we can start to develop solutions. And it's amazing what we can achieve here. So that's enough on Prop 19. Talk to us if you want to go through your specific property. We can help. So let's now talk about some other issues. And Mike, I want to spend some time on Medicare and Medicaid and what that means, what the new budget deal means for Medicare and Medicaid. And let's just go through. This has massive implications for your future as well.
Yeah. We just need to be aware of what's going on. Medicare is untouched, which by the way, means that Medicare is in trouble. This has to do with is it fiscally sound? At one point, is the Medicare fund going to be depleted or dramatically reduced to the point where benefits have to be cut back? That's not addressed in the legislation. No politician wants to deal with the Social Security Fund and Medicare, even though everyone agrees that they're going to run out of money. The only debate is how soon. So untouched is not necessarily good news, but it's untouched. Okay, Medicaid is let's just say where the action is. Medicaid is Medi-Cal here in California. Probably all know that. Many states are cute and creative about how they refer to the Medicaid program. So Medicaid, again, federal program. There are many federal rules. There's federal legislation. Every state has its own state Medicaid plan. Every state is different. California, here's a shocker, has always been probably the most liberal and the most forgiving in interpreting these rules and regulations. So in California, eligibility for Medi-Cal has been relatively abundant. It's been a good thing. There's been expanded coverage for people with disabilities. Many migrants have been covered, otherwise facing emergency room issues and so on. So we've had a lot of expansion here in California. Well, with the new legislation, over about 10 years, the Congressional Budget Office says that about 11.8 million current Medicaid recipients are going to lose coverage. About $1 trillion is going to be cut from the program over a 10-year period. So $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there. I mean, that's a lot of money. The legislation is to add 2, 3, or 4 trillion to the deficit. So, kind of take that in context. And here we're cutting a program that's been the only one available for people with disabilities who don't have enough money to pay for coverage. So what else does the bill do? there were subsidies in Medicaid legislation that made ACA, the Affordable Care Act marketplace, more accessible to people, kind of subsidies, so to speak. Those are disappearing. So it's going to be harder for individuals who want to tap into that market. It's going to be much more restrictive. There were mandated minimums let's say from the Biden era with regard to staffing in nursing homes. No longer. And you think about the implications here. If there's going to be substantially less money in the Medicaid, Medi-Cal program, where are the cutbacks going to take place? Will they provide less money to providers? Think about this. If they're going to pay less money to providers who already complain that the Medi-Cal rates are unaffordable for them, they don't make enough money. Many of them, many doctors, many nursing homes, many facilities do not accept Medi-Cal because the reimbursement rate, the amount they're paid, is low, and because there's a lot of paperwork. We deeply fear that this problem is going to get worse and worse and worse. If there's going to be a 15% or so cutback in the number of dollars coming to California from the Medicaid program, how are we going to make up the difference? What's going to go? What's going to be cut back? So it'll take a little time, but again, if there's less money to pay a nursing home to care for someone, what are they going to do? We fear that many facilities will stop taking Medi-Cal. That's one implication about which we are extremely worried. If a facility has been getting by with a combination of Medi-Cal coverage rates and some private pay, and suddenly the Medi-Cal rate drops significantly, they're going to do the math. They're going to say, why should I even stay in the program? So it's an indirect implication of some of these changes. Immigration, by the way, bears directly on all of this. And the reason I say that is, I think it's like 60% of caregivers in California were born in another state who do caregiving for people with disabilities, nursing homes, et cetera. Well, with the immigration issues that we're having, there will be fewer immigrants, smaller supply of caregivers. If there's a smaller supply, the price, the amount you have to pay them goes up. Add that to the lower Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, and you have spiraling, dramatically increasing costs for those who are paying privately. So again, on and on and on. It underscores the benefit, we believe, of long-term care insurance, which many years ago we were harsh critics of long-term care insurance. No longer. It's something worth considering. If you can afford to pay privately, if you have enough resources, maybe you'll be immune. There are the work requirements that if you're an adult over 18, under 64, there's going to be an expectation that your case is going to be revisited, that you're going to have to, I don't remember the exact language. It's something like verified work, which can mean many different things, 80 hours a month. So the concern here is they'll go back to the special needs community. It's a broad brush, the language that they use. It isn't just your robustly able 35-year-old guy who's just taking it easy. It's everybody who's getting these benefits. So they're going to go back to many people who are special needs, revisit their case, and apply harsher standards and perhaps bounce them from the roll. So again, we don't know about all of this, but if you do the math, there's going to be a cutback in money, therefore a cutback in eligibility, and it's going to have a rippling effect in quality of care. You have to plan. Here we go again. Mark always emphasizes these key moments when you think about how are you going to take care of yourself if you're aging and worried about the cost of care for a facility. Will the in-home support services program, will it suffer cutbacks in funding where you can be cared for at home? Probably yes. Probably yes. And the rates are already substantially lower than for private pay if you go through an agency. So again, the rippling effects are everywhere. We're deeply worried. Last worry. There are many in California and some other states who want to resist. And if they resist by filing more lawsuits, it's an objective fact that this administration can be punitive. So what if the state resists and takes many, many aggressive steps to fight it? I worry that this is going to make us feel good in the short run, but that the administration will be even more punitive, target the states that resist, and give those states even less money. So we're tracking this. We're worried. We can't just have our heads in the sand. We have to look at reality and start to think and plan accordingly.
Well, hope is not a strategy. And
Hope is not a strategy.
couple of quick thoughts from that, Mike. Really good analysis. And I think from a private standpoint, a family standpoint, you talked about long-term care insurance. If you have it, we largely say keep it in most cases. If you're younger, maybe consider it. Financial planning, integrated financial and legal planning, where your estate planning is connected to your financial planning. Another great tool. You might also look at life insurance. I think as people are worried about burning through their assets, if they're not eligible for Medi-Cal or Medicaid or any programs, you might not have much. Well, life insurance can be a way to still ensure there's something there for your loved ones. We help a lot of people to find options there. And I think making sure your estate plan's up to date, because as these rules change, what if you're incapacitated and need help? You need to make sure that you have empowered your children or your loved ones to step in to help reorganize your assets or gift assets so you do become eligible no matter how the rules change. So it has huge implications for your estate plan, your financial plan, your insurance plan. And just one last note there, I think you brought up the fact that we didn't even talk about this. We probably should in our next presentation, that this new bill is expected to increase the federal deficit by 2 to 3 or more trillion dollars. So while we have certainty about the estate and gift tax for the next couple of years, as deficits explode, do not count on this favorable tax structure to remain in place. So this all goes to making sure you're on top of your planning. Now let's transition a little bit. One other really powerful tool we want to talk about, and then we're going to wrap up some key action steps. But I think this is just so crucial. And let's talk about transition to what can you do to protect your kids and grandkids in multiple generations, protect what you leave them from certain types of taxes, from certain types of divorce risk, lawsuit risk. Let's talk about that. Well, the main thing that we recommend if you want to protect your kids, and I'm on record, I think both of us are on record saying this, you should not leave your kids anything. That's the way to protect them. Leave nothing to your kids. Whenever you have live talks, Mike brings this up and everybody looks at me and I'm like, hey, I'm actually on the same page here. We're not saying don't leave anything for the benefit of your kids. We're just saying don't leave anything to them directly. This is next level planning, but there is no reason why this should only be for ultra high net worth families who've been doing this for generations. So it's supercharging your planning. Mike has a recent article in Bottom Line Personal Magazine. It's on our website. Go to gilfix.com. We have many videos about this on our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. But what are we talking about? We're talking about dynasty trusts. And just take a moment. Close your eyes. I know we're doing over a lot of information here, but visualize what you picture when you hear the term dynasty trust. You probably have an image something like this, dynastic wealth, a mansion in the countryside. Although I always point out that a mansion like this in certain parts of Europe is probably worth less than a 3-bedroom teardown in Sunnyvale or Palo Alto. But that jokes aside, I think the term is terrible because it sounds like you have to have dynastic wealth for this to be worth doing. That is not the case at all. And you might consider yourself middle class or maybe lower middle class in the Bay Area. We still recommend these for virtually every family that we work with. So what do we mean here? Instead of leaving money, let's say you have two children, a son and a daughter, you'd have your own separate living trust. But instead of leaving money to your son or instead of leaving money with son and your daughter, you create a family protection trust for your son and a family protection trust for your daughter. They should be separate documents, separate trusts, not part of your living trust. And you say in your living trust, I'm not leaving money to my son and daughter. I'm leaving a share of my estate to my son's family protection trust and a share of my estate to my daughter's family protection trust. Why do we recommend this? Well, now let's go back to the slide. And again, by the way, our firm's version of this is a family protection trust. The generic type of trust that this is a dynasty trust. So again, there's 3 big reasons why you would do this. So 1, divorce. Divorce rates are still over 40%. If you leave assets to your child, if they commingle it with their significant other, they get divorced, a big chunk of what you left them could be lost and could go to support some family that has no connection to you in the future. If you leave in a family protection trust, you're creating a structure. It's like a version of a prenuptial agreement almost. It's not a prenup, but it kind of gives a structure to keep those assets separate and on your side of the family. If your child and significant other stay together forever, great. It's there to support them together. But if something happens, you've created a structure to protect that from a divorce. Lawsuits. I mean, we live in the most litigious society in the history of the world. I think AI is going to increase the number of lawsuits because it makes it even easier to file. There's already so many horrible lawsuits. Some are legitimate, but so many are just cash grabs, right? And AI is going to make that easier. If you leave money directly to your child, it is 100% exposed if they get sued. If you leave it to a family protection trust, nothing is guaranteed. This doesn't lock it up, but you're making it harder for third parties to go after those funds because they don't belong to your child. They belong to the trust. There's other steps they can take to add to that protection. Again, nothing's 100% guaranteed, but it's a lot better than them holding it themselves. And most lawsuits settle out of court. So this is a deterrent for someone to go after that. They have another step they have to take to go after a trust, not just your child. So there's protection there. And this is I think, the most powerful for many families. Again, we have very favorable estate tax rules right now. You can pass 15 million per person. I do not expect that to last. I think it's the exemption could plummet in coming years. I mean, look at where the political winds are blowing. We have the far left is ascendant in some cities. I mean, look at the nominee, the Democratic nominee in New York. He's a Democratic socialist. Let's say we had a Democratic socialist government in place. What do you think estate tax laws would be like then? We might have no exemptions. So right now we can pass a lot, but in the future it might be much tougher. If you leave assets to a family protection trust, subject to some limits, the assets are protected from estate taxes for your child when they go from your child to your grandchild. So anything you leave to your child directly is exposed to estate taxes when they pass away. If your child inherits $2 million, invests it well, it grows to 6 million, 8 million. Add that to whatever they've earned, all of that is exposed to estate taxes when they pass away. If you create one of these trusts, to a large extent, what you leave them plus the growth is not part of their taxable estate, meaning it continues for the benefit of your grandchildren, estate tax-free. And this is where, even if you don't start off with that much, it can actually be a multi-million-dollar benefit to your family. So it's kind of a way to do the best you can to future-proof your estate. Again, control what you can control. This is a really powerful step to protect future generations. And by the way, these trusts last for about over 2 generations in California. So it's really kind of a prenuptial agreement type thing for not just your child, but your grandchildren, if that trust stays in place, and it's multi-generational estate tax protection. And you might think this sounds really great, but it sounds really complicated. I don't want to have some third-party sketchy trustee in charge of things my child can manage for themselves. Well, hey, if your child is responsible and of age, they can be in charge of their own trust. Now, in the future, they may want to step down and appoint a third party, but if you allow it, they can be the trustee of their own trust. So they can essentially have some protections and still manage the trust for themselves and to make sure that they and their family are supported. So they're really powerful tools. They last, again, just over 100 years in California. Some states, they last longer. But they're really, as you point out, that it helps your kids, and it really helps your current and future grandkids, as you like to talk about. So, we think these should not just be for the ultra wealthy. Again, ultra wealthy families have been doing this for years because they have family offices. We're going to talk about that in a little second. They have teams of advisors. You have teams of advisors too. We're part of that if we get the chance to work with you. And we strongly recommend for almost every family, if there's special needs issues, you should create a different type of trust, special needs trust. But if your kids don't have those special needs issues, this is our typically very strong recommendation. So just consider these. It's a very worthwhile tool to consider adding to your estate plan. You got to make sure they're up to date, by the way. Make sure the trustee provisions are correct and that you feel good about it. So now let's wrap this up, and we will get to some questions. We have a lot of questions. We'll get to those at the end. But let's kind of wrap this up. We always like to say, the best performers in the world have teams of coaches. Look at Steph Curry, best shooter in the history of the NBA. He's amazing. He probably doesn't need coach. He'd still be an NBA player without any coaches. But he has a strength and conditioning personal coach. He has all the Warriors coaching staff. He definitely has a whole team of legal and financial advisors. He has a head coach, Steve Kerr. So the best performers in the world have teams, right? And so I always think it's puzzling that we sometimes think, well, I'll just do my own estate plan. I'll do my own accounting, my financial plan. We think everybody should have an integrated team. You don't have to be ultra high net worth to have a team. You have to have a full-time family office. But we do think that your estate plan should be integrated with your financial plan and your long-term care plan. One hand should talk to the other. So, financial advisors won't be familiar with Prop 19, but yet that might be a multi-million-dollar issue for you, or they might not have any tools to deal with it. And of course, legal advisors aren't financial advisors. So we really believe in one hand talking to the other. If you have a great financial advisor, we get the chance to work with you. We're always welcome the chance to work with them as well and to bring them into the conversation. If you don't have a financial advisory team, we're building kind of a network of advisors we work closely with in win-win ways. We call it the Gilfix Family Office opportunity. But regardless, get that integrated guidance because laws are going to change. We talked about the deficit exploding. It's going to change everything in the next 3 to 5 years, I would predict that tax laws will be very different from where they are today. Um, so what are some steps you can take right now? We've talked about so much today. You don't need to remember everything. We're going to post most of this to our YouTube channel. Um, but what can you do to protect future generations? Well, we've talked about some of these, but make sure your core estate plan is up to date. When was the last time? Do you have an estate plan? First of all, if you don't, living trust, power of attorney, advance directive, you need one like yesterday. But the only better time than yesterday is today or tomorrow to set that up. When was the last time you looked at your trust? Do you even know what structure your trust is? Is it an AB? Is it a non-AB? Is it a Q-tip? Is it? You probably don't know if you haven't looked at it for a while. So when's the last time you reviewed it? Do you have the right backup trustees? These are the people who step in for you and your family if you can't manage for yourself. Does your power of attorney allow for asset protection and tax planning and crypto and digital assets? Do you have the right protections in place for your children and grandchildren? Do you have family protection trusts in place? Do you have special needs trusts if there's anybody who has special needs? Have you taken steps to protect your properties from massive tax increases? And again, if you own California real estate, you've owned it for a long time, this is the biggest tax issue for you. Prop 19 is the biggest tax issue. So we can always go through your situation with you and talk about how we might help you. Talk to us if you are worried about property tax increases for your home, for a rental, for anything. If it's in California, we can help. And let's circle back to the 3 points here. Hope is not a strategy. Don't just hope that everything works out. Don't just hope that that simple plan you did a few years ago is going to be fine. These are multi-million-dollar issues, even for families that don't consider themselves wealthy. Control you can control. We can't control how tax laws will evolve. We can't control trade wars. We can't control international conflicts or the stock market. There's a lot more that we can control than we likely think, and that's our estate plans and who we've empowered to help us and our families and the tools we've given them to protect our assets. And again, these are high leverage decisions. The good thing about estate planning is you make a comprehensive update, make sure everything links together. You might not need to touch it for years. I mean, maybe your situation changes, but it's not like you have to pay every week or every month to keep it up to date. By putting the right tools into place, ideally with an integrated plan with a financial advisor and maybe accounting advisor, you can be sure that your family is really well situated. So we obviously welcome the chance, and we're gonna get some questions in a second. If you're not already connected to us, go to gilfix.com, join our mailing list. You can follow us on YouTube. We have over 4,000 subscribers at Gilfix Law. I'm posting Instagram videos now, like shorts, kind of based on our talks at Mark Gilfix, just my name on Instagram. But I think most importantly, if you are an existing client and this gets you thinking, let's set a meeting. Let's sit down, let's go through your situation. But don't miss this opportunity. If you haven't worked with us, call us. Let's set a meeting. Let's set a planning meeting so we can go through your situation and some of the tools we can put into place for you. So you can call us 650-493-8070. I think we have a different number online. Both work. Gilfix.com. But we can help. Pretty much any situation. We can look at your plan very efficiently, go through what is good, what is not so good, what needs to be updated. But small investments now can have massive payouts later. So that's what we love about what we do, getting to know you and your stories and building that plan to meet all your goals and your dreams in a very challenging world, right? So let's all control what we can control. Don't let hope be the only thing driving you. Hope is not a strategy, but we would love to get the chance to help you. But regardless, we hope you got a lot out of this. And don't miss this opportunity while this is top of mind. You're thinking about this now. The moment you log out, the moment you leave, this will start to fade. Your phone will buzz. You'll get emails. You'll have the TV. You'll be distracted, pulled in 15 different directions. There is no hard deadline for estate planning that you can plan for. The deadline is incapacity or death, right? And of course, if there's a change in tax laws, that's another one. But right now, just take these actions while this is top of mind. We hope we get the chance to help you with this. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, subscribe, share this video if you're watching this later with anybody who could benefit from it. And if you have questions, we're going to get some questions now. If you're watching as a recording, put the questions in the comments there. We'll try to get back to those as well. So Mike, any closing thoughts? And then we have a bunch of good questions, so we're going to get to those in just a moment. But before we wrap, any thoughts?
Yeah, we always say, try not to put your head in the sand. You're thinking, oh, gee, I got to think this over. I got to talk to my spouse. I got to talk to my son. Those are all barriers. We've been through this so many times. I just hate it when somebody comes in when it's too late or there's a crisis. So, let's be proactive. Do it. Do your planning when it's comfortable, when you can sit down calmly. I just encourage you, even in the unlikely event that you don't come to us, You just have to take care of these things. I just hope everybody takes care of themselves and their families. We tend to be a little negligent, most of us. We just have so much going on.
So much.
Life is tough. So prioritize this. Think of your kids and your grandkids. That's who this is for.
Take action. Yeah, we hope we get the chance to help you. I mean, regardless, if we can't, if you're in a different state, find an experienced attorney. Don't work with someone who dabbles in this. It really needs to be someone who focuses day in, day out. And if you're in California, we would love the chance to help you. If we already have, let's set a follow-up meeting or just a check-in meeting. And if we haven't, let's set that meeting to sit down and look at your plan, look at your goals, look at your dreams, look at your worries, and come up with the legal side of this plan to protect everything you care about and try to make sure that your dreams for your family can become a reality. Because as we say, hope is not a strategy, and let's control what we can control. Wow, we have a lot of people still here. I'm amazed how many. We have like 3/4 of the people who started are still here. Bravo. Thank you guys. And this was, I think, our largest attendance in like a year. So I think a lot of questions. We'll probably do more talks. So stay tuned. Check our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. Subscribe. We're going to post a lot of content there. We're going to do more live talks. If you want to hear the Q&A, do the live talks. We're going to generally not post the Q&A on YouTube. But share this. If you do watch this on YouTube, or if you see our videos later, share it with people who need to see it. Maybe it's your parents who need to see the Prop 19 issue, so they start the planning. So anyway, thank you all. I'm amazed by the turnout here today from just our little mailing list, but hundreds of people here today. So thank you so much. I am Mark Gilfix here with my father, Michael Gilfix, Gilfix the Pole Associates. Hope everybody stays safe, sane, and healthy, and hope we get the chance to see you soon. Gilfix.com to find us, but get outside. It's a beautiful day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.